Hey folks, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Purgatory Ironworks. I am Trent Ty, your lovable and somewhat fat host. Guys, today we've got a pretty cool little deal because I'm going to show you how to make a tool that is used with punching. Now, here recently there's been this huge thing about hammers. Dave Custer, Brian Brazil, a lot of these guys have been making hammerheads. I've seen a lot of people on Blacksmithing for Beginners, which is a Facebook group, and they've just been selling them like gangbusters. But one of the key features of making a hammerhead or anything like that is that hole in the top of the hammerhead, and you get that by using a tool that's known as a drift. Now, this is a very small drift, but it's something that you need to have in your toolbox. Now, in a couple of different shows, you guys may have seen me use my hand punch. Let me show you what that looks like. And it's really not complicated. It's simply a spike that's been tapered. Well, there's a little bit of a difference between these two guys because this, being the punch, is actually does not have a special taper on the back end. When I'm punching something here, I am concerned about this portion. Now, I may run it on through the metal a good bit, but I can't really accurately judge how big that hole is going to be the further I go down. I mean, I can eyeball it, but you know, if I need something that's exactly a ½ inch, that's where the drift pin comes in. Now, real quick, we're actually going to make this drift pin out of mild steel, and this is the stuff that you pick up at the welding store. It is a jobber tool, meaning that you will use it for a job and then throw it away. But for those of you guys that are starting, you can make this tool work very well. Just if you get to using it a lot, it's something that you want to be able to go out and buy better steel, such as a 5160, an 01, or something to that degree that's a little bit tougher than the mild steel. So, guys, without further ado, let's get to making our ½ inch drift. Really and truly, this is just making two tapers on a side of a bar, one short and one long. And that's pretty much all there is to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the short side first, which will be the top side of the drift. Now, you may ask how long the taper needs to be. Well, it really depends on how thick the stock is that you're trying to punch. Most of the time, you can put a 1-inch top on there, and that's going to be plenty. Because remember, the reason that you have the taper on the top of the drift is so that you can drive it all the way through and it will shoot out the other side. If you did not have the taper on that back side, then you'd actually have to take a punch or something else behind it to knock it all the way through. So if you've got a piece of material that's 2 inches thick, well, you need at least 2 inches of that taper for it to be able to clear. But for most everything you're going to be doing, most people are never going to be doing anything more that's, you know, that's more than a ½ inch thick, unless you're making hammerheads, which is a whole different deal. So for the most part in this drift, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do about 1 inch worth of material to taper down. Now again, you don't have to kill this thing. It does not have to be something that is really, really sharply tapered. It just needs to be, you know, smaller than the ½ inch diameter. So let's see where our heat's at here, which is good. Process is the same. You're going to draw and taper in the square. Again, don't have to be overly aggressive. We'll probably do one draw and taper and then round it back out and take a look at it. So here we go. Just that easy. Now we're going to round it. Now, one thing you need to notice is I am lifting up on the back side of the tongs. Want to make sure she's straight. It's one thing you do want to keep in mind. And then again, very gently, I am making it round again. And there you go. That is it for the back side. Now, even if that's a little too long for you, or you want a heavier, a wider piece from the back, no problem. All you gotta do is take that over to the sander and grind it down. Just as long as you have made it thinner than the ½ inch middle of the shank, you're good to go. So now I'm going to flip it around and do the same thing on the other side, except I'm going to make that piece a little bit longer. Now, one of the things that you need to ask yourself while you're making your drift is exactly where are you stepping off of. If you are actually punching your holes and then going to drift it open, the question becomes, how big is your punched hole? This is a 1/2 inch drift. Now, my punch is usually 1/4 of an inch or maybe a little bit better. So if my punch is 1/4 of an inch, at a minimum, the tip of this guy needs to be a little under 1/4 so that it fits through easily, that you can get it started. If the tip of your drift is bigger than your punch, I mean, you're going to be fighting. You're going to have to basically re-punch it just to get it to work. Now, there's some variations on the drift because, again, we're assuming that the end of this drift is going to be round. It's not always the case. If you're using a chisel to actually cut and then drift, which is in the case a lot of the time, then you don't want a round tip. You actually want a chisel type tip. Again, it needs to be tapered, but you're not going to have that flat end like a punch. So there are several considerations you can take into while doing a drift like this. Now there's our taper. I'm not going to fight it. I'm going to actually go ahead and take another heat, but you can see I've got it really narrow. Don't worry about getting that point too narrow. You can always grind it back a little bit. Let's take another heat and then I'll clean it up and come back in and round it. Here we are again, and I'm going to start rounding it. And you understand that when I'm tapping this, I really am dressing the surface of this guy. I'm not being overly aggressive with the hammer. In fact, I am pretty much smoothing this bad boy, just making sure to keep it straight. But you can see we now have this nice gradual taper here. Everything is straight. And at this point, this is where you're ready to start cleaning up. Now, depending upon whether you're doing this out of just a mild steel for a jobber tool, or you are looking to make something that lasts a little bit longer, at this point you can cool it and then come back in with files or your power sand or whatever, just to make everything a little nicer. Because let me tell you, cleaning that up will make it go through the hole much easier. So let me cool this down. And of course, chucking this up in the vise is really what you want to do. But you can take your big file here, and the file will really show you where the high spots are. It does not have to be clean metal. Remember, this is not, this drift is not a super precision tool. You can get away with a lot. But what I'm going to do is just take a few moments here and file this guy down, make her clean on both the bottom side and the top side here, and we'll take a look at her when I'm done. Now, let me stress to you that at this point, it's usable. We're just making it a little bit nicer. It makes, especially when you file it, makes it a little bit smoother when it goes through the hole. So let me get it cleaned up, and then we're actually going to test it out on a piece, and you can see how it works. Okay guys, and here we go. Now, you can see this has been cleaned up. I did not get OCD or manic about getting every little spot out of there. This will do just fine. The only thing that you really need to pay attention to is right in these transition areas where you actually started tapering, because when you were squaring it, it could cause it to be a little wider than the 1/2 inch shank. Just be mindful. Again, it's not going to break the bank or screw anything up. It's just that's one of the areas you want to pay attention to. But that's your drift. Now, for a lot of drifts, that's a little bit long of a top shank. Again, no problem, not going to affect anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a piece of flat stock. I'm going to use my other punch to actually punch it out. And let me show you something real quick. Now, this is the little punch I use here in the shop, and this is made out of 5160. Now you notice that it's tapered all the way down. Now I can use this as a drift, but the thing is I have to kind of guess because I don't know exactly where a 1/2 inch is here. This is where the drift pin's for. When you put that drift through there, when it pops out, you know it's going to be size corrected to a 1/2 inch, whether you're just guessing with this. So you can get by with this. This is a make-do tool. This is the tool that makes certain you're where you need to be. So let me grab a piece of flat stock and let's punch something and try the drift. All right guys, we got a piece of plate here that I'm going to punch. No particular reason, this is just what was in the scrap pile. So I go in from one side, I flip it over, and I'm going to go in from the back side here. And you see our hole is now punched. So what I will do, I'm going to take another heat while it's still hot. Flatten that back out. And then we're going to be ready to drift. Now a lot of folks kind of get overly excited about the drifting process. If it takes you 3 or 4 heats, don't sweat it. A lot of this stuff in blacksmithing takes several heats, and just one of the things I say at a lot of my shows is that a lot of times blacksmithing is more about coaxing the material than it is crushing the material. And this is really a case of that. Now it is true sometimes you don't want to be a pansy, you just need to go ahead and hit the damn thing. But in this case, coax it. Alright, got my drift, and that hole should be plenty big. Just such a dirty demonstration. There's just, you know, I must be getting old or disgusting because I can't keep talking about drifts and holes and stretching things, and just, it's awful. Okay, we go over our Pritchett hole. Here's our drift. Get it started. Yep. You catch it. Try this again. While it's still hot, I'm going to go in from the back side one more time just to clean this up. And guys, there you go, a drifted hole. Now, of course, you can come back in and you can actually take another heat and continue to clean it up. But there she is. Very good size. You can clean that up with files if you need a really precision punch. But there she is. So guys, that's how it works. Now, this is actually a thinner piece of plate. This is about the 1/8 of an inch. But you saw, once she was punched, you just had to put a little more extra elbow grease in there and go ahead and get it through there, stretched open, no problem whatsoever. But one thing I do want to show you, and now the reason I referred to this drift here that's made out of mild steel as a jobber tool is because that even in that process of me running it through that one plate, the back end has flared considerably. Let's take a look at it real quick. If you look right here, you can clearly see how it was originally tapered versus how it's mushroomed here. This is why you use different types of steels. Now again, it did the job, and if I dress this a couple times, it will continue to do the job, but it's an aggravation to continually have to redo these tools, and that's why you try to make them out of good stuff. You don't have to worry about hardening or tempering this guy, that's not what it's for, but just using an alloy steel like 5160 or something of the like will make it tougher, and it will resist a lot of that right there. But guys, in a nutshell, that's it. That's your drift. If there's any suggestion I could make to you after this, it's to make several different sizes. Have a set of drifts on hand, something that's 1/4 inch, 3/8, 1/2 inch, 5/8. Most everybody that does smithing in a hobby fashion or just in a light duty sense, that's going to do everything that you need it to do. And it's a pretty precision deal because you can drop that right there. You can buy stock in that size. And hey guys, that's the show pieces over there. I'm Trent. Hope you enjoyed it. See you guys next week.